And good day. We ready to continue this? All right, we are going to be talking about Amendment 20, 22, and 25. So, question A. When does a chief executive's term begin and end? And that's easy. It begins and ends on the same day, January 20th, immediately following an election year. So we have elections every 4 years, so an election in 2020. So the presidential term, the new presidential term, begins and ends on January 20th, 2021. Okay, so Donald Trump loses, if he loses this November, a new president takes over on January 20th, 2021. And that means Donald Trump's term ends on January 20th, 2021. Okay? So the Constitution also tells you what time of day. It ends at noon. I mean, it's really specific. And there's all this stuff going on out there that because of the coronavirus, lo and behold, Donald Trump is just going to cancel the election and he's going to continue being president. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. The Constitution specifies when his term is over. It's over January 20th, 2021 at 12 noon. And I'm sorry, he's done at that point. If there's no election, he's done. If there is an election and he loses, he's done. If there is an election and he wins, then he gets sworn in for a new term. But this term ends at a very specific time per the Constitution. Okay? Is there a limit to the number of terms a chief executive can have? And that's very simple. It's 2 terms. You can be elected president twice, and that's it. So that means if you serve them all, 8 years. Now, the amendment also, this is the 22nd Amendment, also says that guess what? You can serve a total of 10 years. And how do you do that? Well, let's say President Trump unfortunately has a heart attack and dies. Okay, so he can't finish out his term. Mike Pence would then finish out his term. Mike Pence would then be able to run for the presidency in November. If he wins, he would serve those 4 years. He could run again and serve those 4 years. So he could end up serving 8 years plus, since we're at the end of March, another 9 months. Okay, so that's how it's all designed to work. Okay, let's see what's next. What if a chief executive dies or is disabled before the term of office begins? Go back 4 years ago, Donald Trump was elected in November, but he isn't sworn in as president until January. What would happen if he died in that time? Well, what would happen is that the vice president, who would be elected, the vice president would then become the president. Okay? Now it's the next one. Question D. What happens if the chief executive dies or is unable to carry out his job? And it's this question, what is the method? And it's the next question, what is the method to determine if a chief executive is unable to carry out the job for physical or mental reasons? And the next question, if a chief executive recovers from a physical or mental disability, how does this person get the job back? These are all questions that are related to the 25th Amendment. And to help you understand them, I want you to go back. My assumption is that every one of you have seen the video of John F. Kennedy getting shot. It's called the Zapruder film. And in the Zapruder film, I mean, it shows him getting shot. And what I've read is that many doctors believe that the first shot did not kill him. If he had only had that first shot in the head, he would have survived, but would have been in a vegetative state. Now, it's a second shot that actually killed him. Now, what would happen if a president were shot, like John F. Kennedy, but only shot once and survived in a vegetative state? Well, the problem is they're still the president. Okay? So, what the 25th Amendment does, and the 25th Amendment became part of the Constitution only after the assassination of John F. Kennedy, because the assassination really freaked out a lot of people. So, what happened is that they decided we need to have a way for the vice president to become the acting president. And that's what the amendment does. It establishes a procedure where simply members of the cabinet and the vice president get together and they say, oh my God, the president is disabled, he can't continue in the job. They send a letter to Congress. Congress then allows the vice president, they approve by a vote, the vice president becoming the acting president. And that's the simple process. So if Donald Trump would have a heart attack or something like that and is unable to continue for a while, what would happen is that Mike Pence would simply get together with members of the cabinet. They'd send a letter to Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi, and they'd say, hey, we want to have an acting president, Mike Pence, while the president is disabled. And Congress would then approve of such a thing. Okay? So that's what the 25th Amendment does. And then Donald Trump, in that situation, gets better. He can then send a letter to Congress saying, hey, I'm fine. I want my powers back. And Congress would then let him have his powers back. Okay? So that's the basic idea of what the 25th Amendment is about. It's a weird thing. There's always a weird thing. Is what if it doesn't work out that way? Give you an idea. First year of Donald Trump's presidency, there was about 5,000 psychiatrists who got together and wrote a letter saying that Mike Pence should get in touch with Congress and say that Donald Trump is mentally ill. And because he's mentally ill, he can't continue as president. Okay? And Mike Pence was not going to do that. But what would happen if you actually have a president who was mentally ill, a president who went crazy, and the vice president got together with other people and said, you know, we got to get rid of this guy. We've had presidents who've been disabled. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, for example. Dwight D. Eisenhower had heart attacks. Abraham Lincoln suffered from severe depression while he was president. So what would happen if you have a vice president who doesn't like the president and the vice president says, oh, we've got a way to get rid of him. Let's use the 25th Amendment. Get together with members of the cabinet, send a letter to the Congress saying, this guy's got to go. Okay? That's the scary thing about the 25th Amendment. And then what happens if the president recovers? The president feels fine, sends a letter to Congress and says, I'm fine, I'm doing good. And what if the vice president says, no, he's not. He's still crazy. What happens then? Okay, that's where the 25th Amendment becomes a little bit problematic. It's a little bit strange, okay? So, anyway, basic idea. President is disabled, the vice president, members of the cabinet notify Congress, hey, we need an acting president. The vice president becomes an acting president. We've never had to use that in American history, okay? But we have a couple of times had presidents who have had surgery. George W. Bush was the last one. And while they're under anesthesia, they have notified, well, actually, more correctly, before they went under anesthesia, they notified Congress and they said to Congress, hey, I'm going to be out for about 8 hours. So would you have the vice president? Would it be okay if the vice president became the acting president during those 8 hours? So there was one time George W. Bush, I forgot what exactly it was. He was having some sort of colon surgery, I believe. He was going to be gone out of commission basically for 8 hours. He notified the vice president, he notified the Congress by letter saying during these 8 hours, the vice president will be the acting president. And so George W. Bush had his surgery, came out of his surgery, he was fine. Okay. Now, I need to bring up one other thing when we're talking about this whole thing of presidential disability, presidential succession. You need to understand that our presidents typically can be older men, and older men sometimes have health problems, and sometimes they get sick, and sometimes they die in office. We're actually in the longest period in American history since we've had a president die in office. The last one to die in office was John F. Kennedy in 1963. So from 1963 to today, we haven't had a president die in office. Thank God. Thank God. But it's going to happen one day. And so the 25th Amendment is a way to deal with some of that situation. Okay? All right. The last part of this section is the 23rd Amendment. And the 23rd Amendment, I just needed a place to throw it in, so I threw it in here. It's really not about the executive branch, but I've got it in here anyway. Can the people in the District of Columbia vote for president and congressional representatives? Well, yes and no. They can vote for the president. If you live in DC, you can vote for the president, but they don't have any representatives in Congress, so they can't vote for Congress. So that raises a really interesting point. The people in DC pay income taxes. They pay income taxes, but they don't have representatives in Congress. What's that called? Taxation without representation. Okay, that's why we had the revolution, right? That's why we got away from the Brits, because of taxation without representation. And then we impose it on the people who live in the District of Columbia. They can vote for president, but they can't vote for Congress because they don't have any seat in Congress. Okay. Next, can the people in the District of Columbia pay taxes? Yes, they do. They pay taxes just like you and I. And the final question, can the people in the territories of the U.S. vote for president and congressional representatives? And the answer is no. Okay, they can't vote for president. They don't have a they don't have an electoral representative in the electoral college. District of Columbia has 3 votes in the electoral college. But if you live in the Virgin Islands, American Samoa, sorry about that. Uh, you can't vote for president, and you don't have a seat in Congress, so you can't vote for a congressional representative. So you live in Puerto Rico, same thing. You're a territory of the United States. You do not have voting representation in Congress, and you can't vote for president. So be careful where you live. Okay, that's it.